Hi, wise ones, and welcome back to How the Wise One Grows. Let's take a moment to land together with a few deep breaths. So just take a moment to situate yourself wherever you are. If it's safe, you can gently rest your eyes and allow yourself to notice where your body is touching the earth. Let the shoulders drop down the back. Inhale, fill your chest, fill your belly with air. Exhale, open your mouth, let it all out. 2 more like this. Inhale, chest and belly expand. Exhale, open your mouth, let it all out. Last one, big inhale. And exhale. You can slowly start to notice where you are. And I'm going to share an introduction of our wonderful guest today. Andrea Davidson has made her living as a professional singer, songwriter, performer, multi-instrumentalist, and producer for most of her adult life. She signed with Warner Chappell in Nashville in 2014 and began a record with critically acclaimed producer Jay Joyce, which landed her a record deal with Warner Brothers in LA in 2016. She has toured all over the world, opening for many inspiring people from Robert Earl Keen to the Dalai Lama. Holy cow! She won the International Song of Peace Award in Tipperary, Ireland, and has always been very passionate about humanity coming together and also helping people live their fullest life. After her time in Nashville and finishing up music technology school, she decided to say yes to an opportunity in Rogersville, Tennessee, and start a music venue in the historic Pressman's Home Valley. This venue, called the Castle Barn, has been consistently growing since its first event. She is also offering songwriting workshops in Hawkins County schools K-12. Throughout her life, she has always dealt with chronic issues, and in her 20s, she finally began to question what doctors had told her all her life in terms of her health. Tired of all the prescriptions, she began to explore alternative means to wellness via food, lifestyle, mindset, spirituality, and supplementation. The walk on this new path changed her life so much. She got as passionate about natural health as she is with music. She opened Be Well Natural Health in April of 2022, which includes a myriad of excellent products to increase wellness and also traditional sauna, which is a powerful tool for overall wellness and detox. Thank you so much for joining us today, Andrea.
Holly, thank you for having me. I'm glad we can finally do this.
I'm so excited for this. Also, what your bio didn't mention that I have to shout out is Andrea has an amazing podcast, Be Well. And I have been nerding out with it this last week, just soaking in all of her tidbits and wisdoms. And what's so cool about her podcast is it just like feels so raw, so real, like you. You're giving a lot of knowledge about natural health and wellness, and then the episodes end with an Andrea Davidson original. Like, her music is insane. I have missed it so much, so I'm like always so excited getting to the end of an episode to hear what
Oh,
you have.
that just makes me feel so good. Thank you.
It's so good. Everyone definitely needs to listen.
Well, it's been awesome because it's just the perfect blend of everything that I love,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to, share what I'm learning as a perpetual student in the health and wellness world, but then also like, share music. It's just the
Yeah.
perfect platform for both.
Yeah, I've been feeling the same way with this, like having poems at the end and mindfulness practices. It's like, how can I make this most authentically me? What elements can we weave in so it just feels really grounded and true to you and what you're doing?
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, and unique what you're doing too. I mean, even just, I don't know if I can say this or not, but just, before you and I started, just taking a breath together,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of dropping in. I forget to do that.
I have learned from when I forget to do that it's like, oh yeah, I need to do this. So I'm
Yeah.
so glad we could do that together.
Yep. Ditto.
Well, so I knew Andrea in Nashville right around 2016. So right around when you signed with Warner. And I guess what I'm really curious about is kind of how that shift, and maybe it's not so much of a shift, maybe it's more of an integration and another door opening, but with music and holistic health, how did that relationship evolve?
Cool. Yeah. Well, basically, my whole life I've just had these little and then not so little unsexy chronic health issues.
Uh-huh.
I mean, literally from the time I popped out of my mom's stomach, which, by the way, was a C-section, and
Me
which,
too.
by the way, was, and I'm a twin, so we both were, and there was no breastfeeding. And the more I delve into understanding why I've had so many health issues, the more I recognize the correlation there, which, we could talk more about if you want. But because of that, and I don't know, maybe it's more than the physical. Maybe it was a spiritual thing too, because there's been so much growth from it. But I've just always been sick, all kinds of stuff, and medications. And I was born in Louisville, but we were raised in a really small town. So we started to see doctors a lot. We moved there in third grade, and it was just sort of a mutual consensus with all these doctors, like, oh, you're crossed to bear, oh, genetics, oh, hereditary, take this steroid, take this fill in the blank, whatever. And it didn't work, you know what I mean? Or maybe it would work for a time. And my mom she asked these doctors about food. Is there something she should or shouldn't be eating? No, there's no correlation with that. It's just, it's just what you're going to have to deal with. And so yeah, the first probably between I guess like 22, 23 years of my life, I didn't, I just was taking medications. I was suppressing symptoms. I was eating trash, like I would drink a cherry Coke for breakfast, and like a Pop-Tart and or McDonald's all the time. And it's not for any other reason than we didn't know any better,
Yeah.
Not like, anyone had malintent, right? We were just doing what we needed to do to get by, and those things were cheaper and readily available. And so that's what we did. But yeah, when I've been doing the music thing since really I was 17. And for the first several years of that journey, I was just learning as many cover songs as I could. And I was writing as many of my own songs as I could. And I was just booking shows, in Madison, which is Madison, Indiana is where I grew up. And then I ended up going back to Louisville and doing the same thing. And I would play sometimes, 8 to 10 gigs a week. I would go from one to the next, and I was hustling, man, just, and it was awesome. But it's still, there were just all of these things that were happening, both, with my physical self and also with my mental health. And it just kind of all hit a point where it was like, oh no, you can't really ignore this anymore. It's like when you have cystic acne so bad on your face that it hurts to smile, and then you're under these stage lights, and then it's just, it's just not sustainable. It didn't work. And I knew, so I started to delve just a little bit, and this whole like universe opened up of options and opportunities, in terms of just more natural kind of stuff. And the more I read about it and tried things, the more obsessed I got. And you know what I mean? And like literally OCD, and it was a pendulum swing. It kind of, got to the point where it was a little out of control, but I was just so excited and geeked out and started to notice little differences. And so yeah, that became, as you said in the intro, that became as much an obsession as writing a song for me, which I was also quite obsessed with writing songs. And so yeah, that's just kind of kind of how it happened. It was just because I got sick. I think that's the story for so many people, don't you? Like,
oh, so true. Well, because our personal experiences are our greatest teachers, and it gives us this window to find our voice in a really deep way, because from going through what you've gone through, you have this like ability to you've learned how to navigate it, so you can better share that with someone else.
yeah, absolutely. And not like I've mastered it or anything. My goodness gracious, there's still stuff. Nothing's perfect. I don't even really know if there's any such thing, but it's just so much better.
Yes.
It's just so much better. And that was, I guess, another maybe lesson I needed to learn too, is like, no, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's the goal is to learn, just to, I mean, I don't know, just to be a perpetual student of life in general is so life-giving. And so to take that, I don't know, I've struggled with perfectionism. I don't know about you, but
Oh,
just
yeah.
trying to like, yeah, and I think it's a cultural thing, and there's a lot of layers there, but releasing that and just being able to be present in the moment and recognize like, oh man, I got a long way to go, but wow, just check it out. I've come a really long way too,
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the greatest things I think the most knowledge comes from someone who will first say like, I'm always learning. Because if you think that you're just an expert, like there's so much left to tap into. So I think it's always a really good sign from a human when they're like, I'm still learning, and here's what I have learned.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
what was it like for you when you started questioning doctors? This is something I kind of find some tension with, and sometimes doctors, depending on the doctor, aren't maybe always so receptive to approaching
Yep.
something different than their approach. So what was that experience like?
I don't know. I think it's a good point to even just say that doctors, I mean, I personally know several people who went into the medical field and are already practicing or very close to practicing. And it's a theme, a common theme between all of these people that I know. They're amazing. They don't, people come into my shop downtown and they're frustrated or they're mad at doctors, and I just always try to gently bring it back to what I know to be true from my experience of knowing people in that field. Is their intention is 100% to serve people and to help people, from what I can tell. I think the issue comes in that a lot of the curriculum that they immerse themselves in is based on pharmaceuticals, and it's based on treating symptoms. And so they don't know that much about preventative unless they're going to have the ability to kind of step into that and redirect their focus and learn about like functional medicine. They're not really going to have exposure to it, so they're trying to help you based on what they know. And there's just and there's so much value to what they know. And then also there's so much value to understanding what you can do to prevent having to get to the point where they have to write that prescription in the first place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I always think that it's like, I don't think it has to be either or when it comes to like Eastern Western medicine. I think it can be a yes and, like, okay, maybe this medicine is something that I find a lot of benefit from, and these diet changes, these lifestyle changes really help. Or maybe it's a different combination, but letting yourself navigate and decide, like, I'm listening to my body. This feels okay. This feels right. This doesn't. This makes me feel grounded in me. This one makes me feel wild inside. Like, what is that balance? And, it's a gift that we have this Western medicine, but it's also, there's a whole other world of gifts too that we don't tap into in that healing space as well.
Oh man, amen. And I swear I say it a lot. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, we've been trained to exist from the neck up so much. And like what you said, there's an honoring of your body, but you have to be in your body and be able to kind of tune into it to be able to see what's working and what isn't, because it's like bio-individuality is a real thing. You could eat soy all day and just be high vibe and great, and I'll eat soy and like fart all day. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, it's not the same for everybody. So being able to, and it, for me, it has been a retraining, because I was trained for so long to give my power away to the doctor, to give my power away to the teacher, to give my power away to the systems. And so it's like, it's you, like you said, the both, and there's value in that. But at a certain point, you've got to also be able to kind of get out of your head and into your body more, and understand and listen to what it's telling you, because there's an internal guidance mechanism, and it's wired in all of us, and it's stunningly beautiful. And I believe it's divine. I really do. And but we have to get out of here, to access it. I feel like,
Yeah. And I think that's something I've really resonated with in your words is when you talk about health, I hear you talking a lot about the mental health aspects as well, and the mindset of what we're thinking and how that can impact our minds, our bodies, our lives. So I'm curious about what that experience was like with you. I guess maybe what has your relationship with mental and physical health been? And then also, like, how did you reclaim that power? How have you worked with shifting your mindset to shift other things in your life?
Well, I wouldn't say it as though I've fully had a reclamation. I would say it's a ever unfolding process, and some days I feel empowered and some days I feel like trash, I just, you kind of just have to move through all of it. But I think I kind of had a come to Jesus moment right before, it was a few months before I decided to leave Nashville and come out here and really root in Rogersville and build community and, build a life. And I've had a propensity to the kind of highs and lows in terms of mental health. And the last real low swing, they just, they were like, you need to be on medicine, because it was suicidal in nature, and not like I tried to do it or anything, but just the fantasy of it, the ideation that, like, and it's very personal and sort of embarrassing, but that's where
but
I was
it's also so important to name, because I think it's so much more common than we ever acknowledge. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that can help so many others be like, these thoughts are things that happen to humans sometimes, and there are things we can do to support ourselves.
For sure. And it looks different for everyone. And that's why, when they told me this last time, and I guess it was a couple months before the pandemic. So it was like January of 2020. And I know people who have taken antidepressants, and I don't know them from the inside. I don't know what it's like for them, but I know my perception on the outside is like, oh, it's working well for them. They're doing good, And so I thought I was I had never tried them before. They tried to get me on them before, but I'd never tried them. And I did. And and they said it takes a few weeks, right? To adjust and whatever your brain chemistry, blah, blah. So I got about 3 days in, and I just had this supreme knowing, I just knew it, because I didn't feel low. I didn't feel shit. Am I allowed to cuss? I'm sorry.
Everyone asks that. It's okay.
And that scared me more. And to not feel anything, especially as a creator. I consider myself to be a very creative person. And that spectrum of emotion and feeling is important. It's an important part of that process. And I realized, I'm like, maybe prescriptions can look a lot of different ways. What if I did a thing where I wrote my own prescription, which was, for me at the time, I was running a lot. And that helps. And it's still exercise for me. It's absolutely huge. It's huge, huge. Get in your body, get sweating, forcing yourself to do something you don't feel like doing. It's amazing how that transfers into other things that need to get done. You don't want to get done. It's like, if you get up in the first part of the day, you get your body moving. It's just, it's great. And so that was part of my prescription. Eating clean, part of my prescription as best as I can, not to be so rigid that it becomes a sickness, which, by the way, it did. In my 20s, I did get diagnosed with orthorexia nervosa. But just in a healthy way, as best I could, make the right decisions with food. And also who am I surrounding myself with? That saying, like, you are like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And just the realization that when you surround yourself with people who are working on, in their own hearts, in their own minds, in their own lives, not with their words, although words are powerful, but you can see it in their life, through action. Because that's also something I've learned. A lot of times, what you say and what you do, they don't have to align up, but what are they doing? And surrounding yourself with people who are living their lives in that kind of a way, and who see the best in you. That also was I guess part of my prescription. And then just like giving as much as I can, just to whatever I feel like. And I'm not talking about myself in any way that I think I'm more special than anyone, because I swear I do believe from the bottom of my heart, every single person comes here with gifts that are also like, they're like tied up in these tough little lessons, and you have to like untie it and learn. And it's like really hard. But if you can work through that, and you can, then all of a sudden your gifts kind of just explode. And then, if you figure out a way to kind of navigate that and then share it, give it back to the world in some way, then all of a sudden it's like alchemy. You take something terrible and you work through it, and you understand it, and your spirit grows from it. And then it can be a gift, it can be a gift that you give back to the world. So just making sure I was doing that as much as I could every day, whatever that looks like. And it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't. Yeah. That's the thing I had to learn big time, because I got really caught up in my ego in the industry of music. I thought it had to be big, and it's like, no, actually, quiet and small it's the same in God's eyes, and it feels better. It feels better.
Yeah, well, it's that finding that balance that's right for you. And you're able to land in this space where music is still such an integral, important part of your life. And you're opening this door. I mean, you're physically opening doors to a space for people to tend to their bodies and their minds through this work that you're doing. So you're kind of, if you were just doing music, it wouldn't be the most youest version of you. You're working through things to find that most authentic path.
Yeah. And don't you think, like, I'm curious your perspective on this, because I noticed people, there's a parallel between when someone decides to treat their body more as a temple. There's this interesting correlation between spirituality and that, and health, making better choices for your actual body. Do you notice that?
I do and I don't. Some people, I think ego can be a strong element, and I think I notice it more when you honor what you're putting in your body as much as you honor your body.
Yeah.
So seeing like that connection to like this cabbage is a gift from the ground. It's all of these wonderful things. Like, how can I best honor that? And that life, that nutrients that I'm getting, and giving thanks, having like a more reciprocal relationship with it.
Yes. I feel like in maybe just like speaking from what happened to me in my 20s, because religion turned me off for a while, and then I did a pendulum swing into like, oh, maybe Jesus wasn't real. Everything is just random chaos and just science, blah blah blah. And so then God for a while was a question to me. And when I use the word God, I don't mean like anthropomorphized white deity in the sky with a set of rules. I in the most mysterious way, that higher power that seems to be pulling and pushing and moving things around. If I'm willing to surrender to it, everything becomes more beautiful and in the flow. That's the God I'm talking about. But there was a direct parallel between when I first began to eat cleaner food and stop eating stuff that was inflaming me or that wasn't even really food, like those McDonald's burgers, the ones that they did the videos where it's sitting on the counter and then 1 year later it's sitting on the counter.
No.
The same, and then 2 years and 3 years. That's crazy, man. And I was eating that every single day. So when I cut that out, all of a sudden, at the same time, I started to attract people into my life that helped me understand that there was a spectrum in between being super religious and an atheist. Mm-hmm. It's this huge gray area. And I had a sort of awakening, but it correlated. It was right there alongside.
I totally see that there's a correlation there. I think it's all connected. So it makes a lot of sense. And maybe it's opening up ways of seeing and relating and the way you're thinking and environments you're putting yourself in.
Yeah. And I see it with people who come down to Be Well too. I'll tell you 80%, and I'm not exaggerating. I would literally say 80% of the conversations somehow end up spiritual. It's weird. It's so beautiful.
I definitely see that. So something I found really curious in one of your episodes, I think it was on forgiveness, but how our emotions are impacting our physical health. Like if we're holding on to resentment or anger, how are we noticing that in our bodies? Like how is our body communicating something and how does that impact our physical health? I guess, how do you notice physically in your body what you're holding on to emotionally?
Mm-hmm. I love that question. That's a thing where I think it's very different for a lot of people. For me, I feel anger in my solar plexus. It's like a tension. I've had a lot of issues with my liver, which supposedly, according to, is it Chinese medicine, that you hold certain emotions in different organs.
Yeah.
Right. And the liver has been something I used to have literally perpetual pain within those first 2 years of me really getting my body straightened out and opening up spiritually. I literally had pain right here. And at the time, I didn't even know where my liver was. So I was Googling what is this pain under my right rib cage? And it's
that's what I was going to ask. How did you know?
Yeah, I Googled it and that's what's okay. And then I saw a diagram, which is hilarious because it's most people know that, but I didn't have a clue, or maybe I learned it in school and forgot or never paid attention, whatever. But I would have this dull, consistent pain. And do you know who Edgar Cayce is by any chance?
I do not.
You'd be fascinated by this guy. But they call him the father for holistic medicine. Fascinating guy. We could talk more about him if you want, but basically he would go into a trance-like state and get downloads basically. And he was a very controversial guy because he was from Hopkinsville, Christian County, Kentucky. His dad was a preacher. Everything was very religious and rigid. And he was just having all of these extrasensory gifts. And one of them was all of these natural remedies came to him through in a trance-like state. So one of the things was castor oil packs. And so yeah, I would put this it's a linen, you cover it with castor oil and then you put it over your liver, and then you put a heating pad over it, and the heat kind of pushes the castor oil in and helps alleviate whatever liver issues. So that was obviously the physical thing that I did. I'm definitely going on a tangent with your question. I'm getting back into physical stuff, but yeah, I think that it showed up for me physically in my solar plexus. I felt that pain in my liver, and then also, I don't know. I mean, it made me. I isolated, and I know that's not a physiological thing, but it made me retract.
What emotion was this again?
So anger,
yeah.
sadness, which I guess they're both kind of, are they both rooted in, I mean, it was fear. I was not in love. I was in fear, right?
Yeah.
I was scared. I was scared to trust, scared to be seen. And it was strange because at that time I was traveling, touring, following a bus around in my own little car. And I would play for hundreds, thousands of people, opening for Robert O'Keen was the main guy. We did like 80 something shows or whatever, but I was so alone, it seemed like I was out and about and,
Yeah.
in the world, but I was very, very isolated. So I would go do those shows and then I would come home and, delve into all this stuff and try to understand it more. But yeah, it showed up as that pain. Probably the inflammation. I don't know. I guess it shows up different for everybody. I'm not an expert. I just know that as I dove into understanding why I was so upset with him and understanding why he is who he is, I was able to shift from resentment and anger into compassion. And again, that paralleled the healing process for me. Everything started to get better around the time that those emotions began to actually really shift.
Yeah, I definitely think our bodies are our greatest teachers, and they hold a lot of wisdom. Often our body will know well before our mind will know. So that listening maybe to, like right now, I've been dealing with a lot of like hip pain for a number of years. It turns out I had like a partially torn glute and a frayed labrum. So I've been like doing that PT work, but also knowing that like our hips are kind of like our emotional junk drawers. It's where we store emotions that we aren't like really feeling or speaking up to. So there's another layer of work to explore in that as well.
And
so you go.
Can I ask you, like, what does your process for that look like?
Yeah. So this is one way, honestly, like, and noticing myself in conversation. I am someone who I tend to be a people pleaser. So most of my life, I kind of spent, I feel like, saying what I'm pretty perceptive and empath, like I'm an empath, so I could kind of feel what someone would want, and kind of like saying that back. Versus kind of noting, okay, when someone's saying this right now, ooh, like my chest feels a little tingly and tight. Okay, does that mean I agree with this or I don't? Am I not saying something? And kind of noticing that, and then saying like, and here's my actual opinion, like hearing what someone's saying, acknowledging it, and giving that back. That also, that's, I would say, arguably the last step. I think the first step is a lot of like, listening to what the body's saying, like getting curious about what's happening in my body. What are the physical reasons? What are the benefits of Western medicine I can use? And then what other things can I get curious about myself? And for me, it often will start with like my morning meditation. I've recently started doing Kundalini yoga in the morning because I've noticed energetically like that's feeling good for me. A lot of journaling, a lot of writing and introspection. And then when I feel grounded enough in myself and my knowing, I can start to practice applying that in other conversations. And it's not always going to be perfect, but then that's something I can reflect back on. It's this like constant relationship and conversation with my body, with my mind, myself. And for me, those formats are typically like some work with mindfulness, meditation, movement, and a lot of journaling, a lot of writing.
Yeah, I mean, that just kind of reminds me of just, I don't know. And I like to study people who I consider to be way, way better than me. And it's this whole morning routine and ritual thing. Would you consider this to be kind of what you do every morning?
Yeah, I've been really big into the morning routine for years, and it's evolved a lot. It's always evolving, but for me right now, I wake up, I will either meditate quietly for 20 minutes or do about like 15-20 minutes of Kundalini and some breath work. Then I'll have like, I've been drinking in the morning. I've stopped drinking caffeine, so I'm having a tincture of reishi, Himalayan sea salt, apple cider vinegar, mint and lemon with some warm water, and then maybe like a cup of tea too. Mm-hmm. Or some decaf coffee. I do like the decaf. Yeah. And then I write for an hour. Like that's I'm going to write for an hour every day. So I hold that space for myself, ideally outside when I can. And then depending on the day, like moving my body, whether it's a run, whether it's on the mat, whether it's a walk with Luna, some sort of movement. And I realized I spend like a good 2 hours on myself in the morning before I'm like, and now I can be a person. And it's it's a luxury. It's a gift. And like, if you like, I know
it's a choice.
It is a choice.
It
is a choice.
Yeah.
And right now my life is such that I can, sleep a little more reasonably. But there were times in my life where it'd be like, this meant waking up at 5, 6 a.m. to honor that space.
Yes. Yes. That's amazing. That's amazing. And it takes courage, man, to like, I don't know, to honor yourself enough to do that, to say yes to that. I feel like there's this, and it's changing, but this sort of self-sacrificial, like, oh, I have to, I don't know. There's an expectation that other people have that's a projection that you take on yourself when like, I'm thinking of someone in particular right now. She's probably the closest person to me in my life. I won't name who it is, but I see she's highly sensitive and she needs a ritual. And it's almost like she doesn't feel deserving enough, or she's so spread thin with family, with work, with all these things that she doesn't make the choice to honor herself enough to say, nope, this first hour of the day or 2 hours of the day or whatever, I'm going to do what I need to do to be able to be the best that I can be for everyone.
And that's been me. I have so been that person, spread way too thin, doing everything for everyone else. And that's when, I've probably said it on this before, but my body told me aggressively, like, yo, check in, Holly. I got shingles in my right eye and almost lost my sight in college from that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And that's when I was like, I didn't even know I was stressed. And my body gave me like a hard no. And that's when I really learned, like, you got to check in. And it's called post-herpetic neuralgia. So I still get like post-shingles pain. When I am too tired or too stressed, I'll feel that tingle on the whole right side of my face. And it's my check-in to be like, whoa, slow down. Otherwise, you're in trouble.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's kind of, it became a non-negotiable. Well, it could have been negotiable, right? Like, we all have our things that happen, and you can choose to listen to it, or you can choose and learn from it, or you can choose to keep going down the road that you're going. And people do both.
Yep.
Yeah.
People oscillate as one person. They oscillate from.
Yes. Yeah, there are times where I do better than others, and it's a constant conversation. And also with that morning routine, I think it's really important to honor, like, sometimes I might need 2 extra hours of sleep. And the most loving thing I can do would be sleeping in, like, not being so rigid with it and letting it, like, every day be a loving conversation with, like, what does my body need? What is it that I need today?
Right.
Yeah.
I get so rigid about it. I have to schedule. I schedule nothing. I will say, okay, well, this morning I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna allow for what the heck ever. It's
important.
It is important.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as we're ending today, I am curious if you have anything in your mind, like, what would be one step people could do today to start better honoring their bodies and their minds and their health?
Man, it's hard to say one step, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I like breaking things down into simple. Did you ever read the book Atomic Habits?
I have been recommended it and I have not read it yet, but I've heard really great things.
It's cool. It just kind of like, because it can become overwhelming. When you start to want to make changes, you're like, I'll say my personality type is I uprooted my whole world and everything flipped. Everything was inverse. And it was just so intense and not helpful. I mean, I didn't do myself any favors being so hardcore, so it's like, oh, well, what's one little thing, one thing at a time, and then you can kind of start stacking these new habits as you integrate them. I like that approach. It's gentle.
And change happens when people feel like they can do it. That's when it becomes sustainable. When you feel successful, you want to continue. So if it's something that you can do and feel good about doing, then you'll grow your capacity. Your like muscles will grow so you can do it more and continue.
Yep. That's 100% right. So I think there's like maybe there's a mental or psycho-spiritual answer, and then there's a physiological answer, which they feed each other. But one thing I like to tell people that's super from a psycho-spiritual standpoint, I think what we were just talking about is powerful. Figuring out, well, what is the window of time I have in the morning to create a sacred space? And if it is 30 minutes, I mean, I remember when the last tour I did, I was opening up for Caitlin Smith, and we were on the road for a couple months. And my best friend and I, we just, she was playing music with me, so we were on the road together, and we didn't have very much time in the morning because sometimes we'd have to drive, several hundred miles. And so we would say, all right, we called it a power hour. And hers looked a little different than mine, but she was really into running a lot more than I was at the time. So part of that would be running. Part of that was reading something spiritually inspirational. She had another one, but I can't remember. But mine was, of course, writing, some kind of exercise, preferably with some kind of weights, because I liked the strength training more. And then, reading something spiritual, or I think they changed a little bit, but we called it a power hour. It's like, all right, well, what can I do? And we broke it down into 3 20-minute sections. It's like, these are the 3 things I'm going to do. And so, like, if that's all you have, you've got 5 kids and you've got a full-time job and you've got, all these expectations. It's like, it's okay if it's only 20 minutes.
Or even 5, or even 1. If you set a timer for 60 seconds and breathe.
Literally. Do you know about the 4-7-8 breath?
I was literally doing that before our call today.
I love it. See, that was fantastic, because it's like, if you don't really have any time, you literally can sit up in bed and do it. And it's people, if you haven't shared it with your audience before, it's super easy, and there's science behind it, it what it does to your nervous system, and it's amazing. But it's, 1 breath, count to 4 through the nose, hold for 7, out the mouth for 8. Do 5 of those. If that's all you got, then that's fantastic. You're setting yourself up for
completely
success.
True. And there's the practice of that is in the Mindful Moment for Divine Rage episode. It talks about that breath specifically. So definitely recommend checking it out.
Great. Okay. I have to go back and listen to that one. And, okay, so, and then, I guess the more physical one is, because I notice a lot of chronic stuff that's going on with myself, but with so many people, has to do with a spike and drop in insulin levels. People are having issues with sugar and balancing their blood sugar. And so I always say, and another thing I notice is people don't drink enough water. So I always say, like, a powerful thing that you could do in the morning is just get a big container of water and set it on your bedside table. And that way, before your feet even hit the floor, just chug that, just get it in your body, get it done. If you can stomach like somewhere between 10 and 20 ounces, do it. I'll chug it. And then there's not a day that goes by I don't do that now. And it's helpful, because you get going in your day and you forget to do all kinds of stuff, like breathe, but it also drink water. And then the other thing I think is really, really important is that whatever the first meal is you put in your body. It's a big thing, because it sets the tone for the whole day. If you start your day with a donut, which I'm not saying that there aren't days you shouldn't just enjoy a donut. I'm not saying be perfect, but most of the time, if you can start your day with something that is a really good protein, a good source of fat, and some fiber, you're gonna notice less cravings. You're gonna notice more sustained energy. You're gonna notice you don't have the crash that you would have if you had a muffin or whatever, or cereal, even cereal. I mean, and I won't go on too much of a tangent, because I know we're getting close, but have you been reading or researching any of the data points for these continued glucose monitors?
No, not at all.
Holy cow, this stuff is blowing my mind. There's like 50 million plus data points now, and basically everyone's wearing these monitors, so they're able to see. And this is why the bio-individuality thing is just, it's hitting me upside the head every day. I'm like, no, there isn't a one size fits all. There just isn't, because somebody could eat a grape and be fine, and somebody else eats a grape and it spikes their blood sugar like crazy.
Yeah.
And just again, blood sugar doing this, one of the foundational issues with most chronic diseases. There's so many things that correlate with that. So it's important to keep it balanced. But they now are, all these data points are flooding in from everyone, because it all filters in through the app they have. So cereal, that's the thing I was just going to tell you. This is one example. Cheerios, you would think like, oh, hearty, healthy cereal. No, dude, like it spikes your blood sugar so bad.
Even like not the honey nut, just the plain ones?
Yeah.
Ew.
Isn't that sad? Actually, that's a good question. Now, I would have to go back to say for sure if that's the case. Yeah. But in general, more starchy, carb, all that stuff, turns right to sugar. So so that kind of stuff, if you're going to do it, it's like, couple it with something that has fat and protein if you can, and try to just, really just more fat and protein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. No, that's such a helpful thing. I think that like the nutrition element of what we're putting in our bodies and how that enhances and impacts our ability to regulate our mood, our emotions, our behavior, our energy level is so essential. And it's often probably one of the first places you should be looking. Like yesterday, I was crashing hard at the end of the day, and I was like, I actually think I need food. And I took a few bites of food, and I was like, whoa, I'm a new person.
Yes. Yeah. We forget. And it's funny because it's like the chicken and the egg, because sometimes your mindset can affects your physical health, and whatever who was it, Henry Ford, that said, whether or not you believe it's true, you're right. So it's like the mental has the capacity to affect the physical, but also that's such an awesome way to mentally get clearer and more balanced, is to focus on what you do and don't put in your body, physically speaking, because it does have such a physiological effect as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time to share with us today. I feel like there's so many more questions about the nutrition end I'd love to dive into in the future, but I'm so glad that we had you today. And how can people continue to follow you, support you, and your work?
Well, first, I just want to say, Holly, thank you so much. You are an absolutely... the first time I ever met you, Ugly Mugs, I was just like, what a beautiful human.
That was the most magical space. I was obsessed with you from the start too.
Oh my gosh, there's so many magical things happen because of Ugly Mugs. If you don't know about Ugly Mugs in Nashville, everybody just go on in there.
Absolutely.
My life changed because of that place, for sure.
Same.
And you're just, I love what you're doing, your spirit, your energy, everything. So I just want to say thank you for, asking me on, and it's also just for exuding the energy that you do. Because that's how the world's going to change, is us doing the work in our own hearts. And it's just very, very obvious that's what you have been doing for a while. So thank you. And then, I guess, to support, I've got the Be Well Natural Health store. So if you're ever coming through East Tennessee and you want to pop in, there is an online store, which, I don't know what's going on. We're having some technical issues, but I think we're working out the kinks now. So that's good. Great practice and patience. And then, there's music on Spotify and iTunes, and the podcast. I'm real excited about the podcast. So you can go, it's on iTunes or Spotify or whatever. You can see all of the different platforms. If you go to www.bewellhealthstore.com/podcast, you can see all the different platforms you could listen to the Be Well with Andrea thing through. But and I just, whatever, I would say just the best way you can probably support me is just, being gentle and loving and honoring yourself, whoever's listening here, because that's the work right now. That's the work to to transform, and just bring more light onto the planet is really just each of us doing our own work in our hearts,
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. What a pleasure.
Thank you for taking time to listen to the wise one inside of you today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast to help it grow. Until the next time, let's keep taking it one breath at a time.